So the good news is I've been informed there's no drinks right after this, so I was planning to take about 2 hours as opposed to the normal 1 hour reserved. And I'm a firm believer in death by PowerPoint, so I've prepared about 105 of these slides, and we're going to go through each one in painstaking detail. So with that, let's spend the first 5 minutes on our title slide. No. Actually, I'd like this to be as interactive as we can make it in presentation format we have. What I would like to do is just I've got the corporate overview slide that marketing forces me to put in to the presentation. I will go through that relatively quickly. There's only one slide kind of middle of the presentation where I'll raise my hand and say that I have a strong bias and this is kind of a company position rather than an industry position. But the talk today is really about how we keep the internet free. So there's two main technologies that rely on data mining. One is how you build an ad server, how we monetize all of these wonderful free websites out there. What's the technology behind that? And the second is a relatively new advancement in online marketing, and that's behavioral targeting. And Google calls it interest-based advertising. Essentially, it's guessing what people are interested in and marketing to those interests rather than the current page they happen to be on. So that's what my talk is about today. I'll go through about the various problem sets, the various approaches to solving those problems that different companies take. And then, as I mentioned earlier, I'd love any questions because I'm here for you. So the first question I have for the audience is, how many people have been on the internet? Okay, majority, I'd say. And then how many people have seen an online ad? About the same number. And then how many people can remember the last ad they have seen? Ooh, yeah, that's why this is a very important talk. And I'd say that we're actually, even though we're 15 years into the evolution of the internet, or at least the commercial evolution of the internet, we're still at the infancy. There's so much improvement to be made. Typical response rates today for an ad banner that, this room, we didn't quite have 1,000 people, but typically 1 out of 1,000 impressions, you'll get a click. So we're wrong 999 times out of 1,000. And that's not so good. But turning that around, there's lots of room for improvement. So that's, again, a little bit about what today's talk is about. So we invested all of our marketing dollars in this one slide, the rest of the presentation I put together. This is the corporate slide the marketing forced me to put in here. ValueClick, not very many people know about us because we don't have a lot of properties that are consumer-facing. We're a marketing services company, so the ad agencies know about us, but very few consumers do. That being said, we actually have an ad banner relationship with probably everyone in this room, and we're ranked by ComScore, who keeps track of these things, as the third largest ad server in the world. We have a few other divisions. Smarter is the one property some people may have heard of. It's a comparison shopping website. In Europe, it's called Price Runner, but it's the same subdivision. We run the largest affiliate marketing division called Commission Junction, and we also run an ad auditing service. So this is how marketers keep track of who's viewing and clicking across all the different media buys they make. So I know that there's a lot of jargon in my talk today because I live in a very insular world talking to a lot of folks, and we try to have lots of acronyms and confusing meanings for words. So I thought I'd start off with a few definitions just to get everyone on the same page. That was a pun. The first is we often call the website that someone's on the context of their visit, their session. We have people who look at that page, and we show ads on that page. Now, the visitor is called user, sometimes visitor, cookie, and sometimes other not-so-nice terms. The context is called content, website, page, so we've got a lot of names for that. And then the ad banner is usually called ad banner or banner. So what are we trying to do? Well, marketers are trying to find good people to expose their messages to. And they pay what's called an eCPM, effective cost per 1,000 impressions. And it's Latin for the melee, that's why it's not T. So they're trying to run a campaign. Well, what's a campaign? They've got a whole bunch of ad banners, And they want to run them on a whole bunch of sites and serve them to a whole bunch of people, and that sum total of dimensions is what we call a campaign. So what a publisher is trying to do? Well, they're trying to maximize the quote-unquote yield off of their site. And the yield is a very simple metric. It's how many of my pages that I show a paid impression, a paid banner, and how much did I get paid for that? The eCPM that the marketer was paying. So if I have a 90% fill, I served paid ads on 90% of my web pages, and I got $1 for each one of those, it would be the 90% times the dollar times the thousands, or times total number of impressions divided by 1,000. And that would be the yield to the publisher. So if we look at the two technologies I mentioned at the beginning, behavioral targeting and the ad server, many times they get confused, right? They're both trying to make the right match, try to identify what's the right ad to show to the right person. But there's a slight distinction. Behavioral targeting is trying to understand what is a visitor interested in general, whereas the ad server is trying to figure out in a specific context. And that's the primary difference between these two technologies. And we'll get into some other differences on the behavioral targeting side, which is specific to that approach and not so much in the ad server landscape. But if we look at some of the data mining technologies or approaches that are brought to bear on our problem, one is trying to understand what are all these events that I've observed. So I may see someone visit a number of different pages, but what does that mean? So you went to URL xyz.com, but what does that mean? So trying to extract key terms, topics, categories out of that page is a very important input into guessing what someone's actually interested in. They went to a lot of quote-unquote sports content. I'm going to guess they're interested in quote-unquote sports. But trying to figure out that this page was about sports and not about a drug bust or about some random accident that happened in the world or some charity event, right? There's a lot of ambiguity that can come out of trying to automatically classify text. And we could go off into the Jaguar and China examples that people normally bring up. The second thing that the behavioral targeting is trying to accomplish is cardinality reduction. So if we look at our problem set, we've got literally billions of web pages. And we also have hundreds of millions of cookies or users. And we'd like to try to reduce the cardinality because otherwise our data set would be incredibly sparse. So if I can group people together into these interest segments, I've gone from hundreds of millions down to maybe hundreds or potentially thousands of categories. So that's a huge reduction in our problem set. The third thing that behavioral targeting is trying to do is expand inventory. So think of yourselves as small publishers. I don't know, does anyone operate a website? I do. A couple of people. My website is all about MBA topics. I went to B school and never kind of left with my mind, and so I'm constantly thinking about the B school topics, especially around strategy. Well, there's not a lot of monetization you can do about that, right? People come to my site, I'm going to guess they're interested in business school, but that's really the only thing I can guess that they're interested in. If I could use some sort of behavioral targeting technology, then I could probably monetize my site based on people's interest in buying a car or refinancing their house or maybe an interest in golf. So it expands the inventory that I would have to sell on my website. It's still one page view, but previously I may have only been able to sell 10% of my inventory based on the business school interest or the current context. If I can look back and figure out what all of the visitors' interests are, maybe someone's about to buy a flat screen TV. I can monetize that activity independently and on top of trying to monetize other activities. So it expands the inventory if I can have behavioral targeting brought to the publisher side.